I'm just going to do what they do. I see the person who must be wealthy, must be successful, must be rich. I'm just going to emulate them because boy, does it look like they know what they're doing.
Well, we live in a unique community, Bo, where I ride around and I see the bigger and bigger houses. And I realize there must be a lot of people out here that are moving the goalposts.
That's
and if
right.
you do what you think the wealthy do, believe me, like I said, this is a marketer's dream. It's not necessarily what we see from when we do our wealth survey of our clients, of our financial mutants out in the audience. Just, I'm telling you, doing what they do and keeping up with the Jones is a bridge to nowhere.
And the hard part is, and what makes it so dangerous in the 40s is for a lot of folks, this is when you begin to catch traction. This is when your income begins to increase. So you can start actually making these decisions. You can buy the more expensive car. You can buy the more expensive house. But just because you can does not mean that you should. So what are some of the signs of the secretly broke in their 40s? Well, the visual one to start with is they think, man, you know what? I'm too good for cash. If I have cash laying around, either one of two things is happening. Either that cash is not being invested for me and it's sitting idle, or man, instead of having that cash, I could go buy that nicer car. I could go on that nicer trip. I could buy those nicer clothes. I don't need cash because I haven't had an emergency thus far. I'm probably not going to have one. That is a flawed thought process.
Well, I mean, this one cuts both ways because I see a lot of financial mutants who actually are really good with money, but they just don't respect what cash can do for them as a tool, even in emergencies or other things, versus the people who are bad with money. They also are way too lean on their cash because they're relying only on their cash flow, their income, thinking that's going to be enough. Well, we all know life has a strange sense of humor and will surprise you on a random Tuesday at 2 p.m. when you get called into the office and they tell you they're downsizing or doing some big change. You need to have cash to make sure you make it, whether you're successful or whether you're aspiring. Cash is going to be a valuable tool for you.
There's also a behavioral sign that you can notice for folks in their 40s that might be secretly broke. And it's these folks that are constantly, all the time, searching for complexity. Oh, yeah, I just saw this thing about how I can go be a short-term rental investor. And if I do that, I can use all these losses, or I can go do the private equity, or I can go do fill in the blank. And they want the more complex and the more difficult and the more hard to understand thing because they believe that that's what wealthy people do, when in fact, that's often not the case.
Yeah, there's a whole marketing thing that happens that trying to convince people who are starting to catch some traction with their assets is that when you have money, this is what you're supposed to do. And I've picked on the dumb doctor deals. Everybody hates that name, but there's a market out there.
There's a reason.
I mean, because these things are complex for the sake of being complex. I mean, we could be talking about whole life strategies. We could be talking about the rental properties, as you said. We could be talking about the private placements, all these things. Just look, and I'm not saying there's always an ounce of truth.
Sure.
Some of these things are definitely financial tools that even successful people use, but you just have to cut through what the brochure says from what the reality is. And a lot of people don't recognize that what got you here to success, like index investing and just being disciplined, understanding deferred gratification, doesn't change overnight just because you're in your 40s and your income's a little bit bigger. Don't fall prey to the marketers. Don't fall prey to the marketers.
Don't fall prey or prey to the marketers. Either one. There's also a mindset sign that you ought to be aware of that we see for a lot of folks in their 40s. And it's this idea that they end up valuing income and the shovel over actually net worth. And oftentimes you'll hear this communicated this way, man, if I just made a little bit more money, if I could just get my income up, or if I could just go invest in the rental property, if I could just create more cash flow, if this happens, then I could convert that to net worth, not recognizing that those two are not the same. If you're unable to convert lower incomes to net worth, there's a high likelihood that you're also going to be unable to convert higher incomes to net worth as well.
Well, I mean, we've seen this in the stats when they go out there and they survey people and say, hey, how much money do you need to make to actually be successful? Millennials reported right under 181,000. Gen Xers were right over $212,000.
Those are huge income numbers.
Those are much larger than we know median numbers are in the United States. And I'm here to tell you, you don't require multiple six figures to have success. You just require a little bit of discipline and actually living on less than you make. And this is back to make sure you're spending some time realizing what gives you value so that you can actually spend lavishly on those things, but not get caught up in spending money on something that's pretty purposeless and just doesn't give you that much happiness.
So what are the lessons that we can learn from those in the 40s that are secretly rich? And in the 40s, these really do become the people that are actually the millionaires next door. Well, the first is that wealth is much more about what you keep, not what you make. And we see this all the time, Brian. We've seen people with very modest incomes, even some people with low incomes, that are able to build very healthy portfolios and have substantial amount of wealth, even though they never made more than six figures. But it's because they capitalized on the ingredients of wealth creation that they could control. It's not just about how big is your shovel, how high is your income. It's how well do you turn your shovel, how well do you turn your income into actual wealth.
This is why I would encourage everyone, please, 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 do a net worth statement every year. I mean, I know that even if it's negative in the beginning, that's A-okay, because there is something just really valuable about you going through the exercise of comparing and contrasting what you have versus what you owe, because it wakes up parts of your brain saying, hey, I can do this differently. And it gives you that dashboard so you can make much better decisions about what you're doing with your life. Instead of just daydreaming, you're actually slowly creating a plan in the background.
Another lesson that we can learn from these folks, from the secretly rich in the 40s, is that cash represents not a waste of time or not something sitting idle, but it's actually a twofold thing. It provides security and also opportunity. Brian, you and I talk about this all the time. We often think about how, cash in your emergency fund is the thing that keeps your life out of the ditch. It protects you from the unknown unknowns. But there is a secondary benefit that cash has that a lot of people in their 40s actually end up recognizing.
Yeah, this is the part. I mean, I think it serves multiple facets. It keeps you from those desperate decisions of the emergency. But I have found it also creates incredible opportunities for wealth building. If you have a resource like cash, when everybody else is panicking and looking for, hey, I don't have cash, the market's getting its teeth kicked in, what do? You get to have a stable mind. You get to have a resource that has become much more valuable. Cash is a sleeper wealth builder, and people just don't recognize that opportunity.
And then the last lesson that I think we can take away from those in the 40s that are secretly rich is, to the extent that they control it, they try to just keep it simple. Things like buy and hold work. Things like always be buying work. Things like living on less than you make, making sure you cover your bases, taking care of your risks. Those things are not incredibly complicated. They are relatively simple. And what you find is, even though you try to keep things simple, and even though you try to make it as easy as it can be, complexity will naturally find you. Well, if complexity will naturally find you, there is absolutely no reason for you to go seek it out. Don't worry, it's coming. So to the extent that you can control it, keep it simple, and you'll be amazed at how the dollars actually stack up.
Think like a brilliant engineer where you're trying to always just engineer this thing down to keep it as simple as possible because it's going to be easier to maintain. As Bo's just shared, you do this right, the complexity will naturally happen by your estate getting bigger, your tax return getting more complicated, the investment structure needing a little bit more attention. You don't have to find it. You just need to do what you're good at, build up the assets in the background, and watch the money grow.